I put out a video a couple of weeks ago about songs you could use to identify different modes, and it kind of took off, at least for my channel, which was really unexpected. And in that video, I included a few of my own tunes, and I thought some of you might be interested in how I actually think about using modes when I'm writing music. I'm not going to focus on the actual theory of the modes in this video. I have a whole series of lessons on that already if you want to dive a little deeper into each mode. I want to focus on the modes from more of a larger picture view here and explain when and why I would use them. First and foremost, I compose using modes when I want the mood and vibe of that mode. Each mode has its own unique character, and once you have a handle on how the modes sound, you can start to use them more effectively. I view modes on a scale from bright to dark, Lydian being the brightest and Locrian being the darkest, so if I wanted a darker sound, I could reach for Phrygian, for example. Or if I wanted that brighter sound, I could go for Lydian. Or if I want a minor sound but not quite as dark, I could go for the Dorian mode. In the examples you just heard, I am focusing on the specific notes that give that mode its unique sound. The flat 2 in Phrygian, for example, or the sharp 4 in Lydian, as well as the major 6th in Dorian. Another important tip if you want something to sound modal is to not move away from the root note too much. The most clear examples of modes stick to the root note in the bass instrument. You can do some short chord progressions like 2 chords back and forth or a short chord loop, but if you introduce too many chords, it starts to sound like the parent major key or minor key instead of a modal progression. Now, for example, if you go C to D back and forth, that sounds very Lydian, like C Lydian, because you're kind of just going back and forth between these two chords. If I introduce a G major in there, now it sounds like we're resolving to G major, and it sounds like it's in the key of G major instead of being modal. So in this case, it'd be better to stick between those two chords back and forth. I could even put the C in the root on both chords, so you'd have C and then D over C. That sounds even more modal. Another way I love to use modes is for contrasting moods. I've talked about how each mode has its own unique mood, so I can use multiple modes against each other to create some contrast. Here's the second verse into the bridge from my song Paramnesia. In the verses, this song is moving through a couple of different Lydian modes. It starts with A Lydian, and then goes to C Lydian. I think somewhere in there it goes to E flat Lydian. But when the bridge hits, it goes right to A Phrygian. So you're going from a bright sound Lydian to Phrygian, a darker sound. And you can feel this mood change as soon as this hits. This is a great way to add contrast to your music and help you tell a story. And in the case of this song, it actually goes right back to Lydian after this heavy bridge section. That's a few ways I might use the major scale modes, so let's talk about modes of other scales. You can build modes off of any 7-note scale, the most common ones being harmonic and melodic minor. Now I am planning on talking more in depth about some of these in the future because there's some really fun sounds in a few of these modes. I often use these modes to create exotic and unusual riffs and melodies. Just like with the major scale modes, each of these has their own unique sound, but because they aren't nearly as commonly found in most music, they make for more interesting and unexpected ideas. My song Solar Storm is a great example of this. Most of the heavy riffing here uses the 6th mode of melodic minor, Locrian sharp 2, sometimes I'll call this Aeolian flat 5, and this is a really dark sounding mode, but in a different way than a Phrygian or an Aeolian, and that sound combined with the angular odd time signatures makes for unsettling, chaotic riffing. And just like I did in Paramnesia, I mixed in some brighter sounding modes for contrast. So there are a few examples of how I might actually use modes. I know this wasn't a super detailed theory lesson, but I wanted to focus more on the overall approach of how I think about modes and why I would use them for musical purposes. Hopefully some of these ideas were helpful for you, and if you enjoyed this lesson, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all of that, and I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay proggy.